Auxiliary led output. It's
gotta be, it's what it means, I think. If they're
relating.
it's ready.
Whenever you're ready, I'll turn right.
We're ready.
Good evening to everyone.
Hello.
Hi.
Go ahead, Eric. You can.
I'm sorry. Did you go my name?
No, you can start whenever. You're good.
Here?
Oh, no, I haven't started. I'm just opening for the meeting, today, the Board of Parks and Parkways, Tuesday, June 11th. And I'll call roll, Chair Eric Ritchie here, Vice Chair Lynn Brooks,
Here.
Board Member Pamela Carney,
Here.
Board Member Michelle Baum,
Here.
and Board Member David Vargas. Here. And we have also in Zoom, we have Councilmember Jackie Bridwell, we have the Public Works Director Liz Fuentes, and we have Roger Toll, our city attorney, also present. Next, first business item of business is the approval of minutes.
Okay.
You didn't get minutes for this one. I was just explaining our, it happened kind of like not too long ago, our recording software. It's the laptop that we record on, it's not, it's being updated, and we're actually getting a new one. I have the draft if you want to see it, but I don't have the details of, like, the timestamp and all that stuff, so I wanted to push it to the next meeting to get that with the details of that.
Okay. So we'll do minutes of last meeting, next meeting.
Yeah, you'll do it together with these on the next one.
All right, great. The final discussion on proposed ordinance.
Yes.
Last. So Juan sent us a clip of the section of the meeting that included us. And there was a discussion of the business that we sent to them, which was the revised ordinance. And what is your title?
Hi, this is the first time I'm here. My name's Roger Poe. I'm actually with the city attorney's office. I am the assistant to Heidi Sarah, the city attorney.
Okay,
Yes.
that's great. Good to have you here. So Roger spoke in clarification of some of the terms. And there was a discussion around about that, mostly Mayor Mitchell. And they discussed it, they liked it. And then, of course, the gentleman, do we have his name on here?
Yep, it's in the back. It's George Fitzpatrick.
George Fitzpatrick is you can see his title. He's a professor at the Florida State Horticultural Society, he's the chair of the board of directors, and he lives in Springs. And so we're very, very lucky, not only to have him, but to have him get involved without us even knowing he existed. So he came up with these changes that he thought were very important, and I think they're great changes, and he even told us where to put them and what lines they are and all that. So it's really kind of all beautifully laid out. And so we'll have a brief discussion on this. Does anybody have anything on this? Roger, did you have anything on this?
I do. Thank you, Chair. So I was able to look and review Mr. Fitzpatrick's comments. I think they are very well thought out. For the most part, I agree with almost all of them. The only change that I thought might need a little more clarification between me and him is the very first comment regarding the definition of arborist. The reasoning that I had in defining arborist as it is because that is actually a definition that is used within the Florida statutes for statutory preemptions and statutory regulations relating to, excuse me, arborists. So that's the one section. I will say that Mr. Fitzpatrick provided a lot of really good input as far as I'm concerned in relation to the names of the species.
Roger, I'm sorry. Was there something provided by Mr. Fitzgerald? Do I have it? Just so I can see what.
Yes, Council Member Bravo, the the letter, it appears to have been sent either sometime immediately before our first reading, and it was shared earlier today.
Okay, I'll look, don't worry.
Yeah,
It should be in the calendar invite that you received today, the attachments.
Okay, so the agenda backup,
Yes.
and for the record, this is the first time that I saw it was today, but I did go through it and, most of the changes that I see are relating to tree species, and I am an attorney, not an arboriculturist, so I totally defer to his expertise when it comes to that. And to the extent that this board doesn't mind, I'll of course speak with him and get the clarifications as to the specific tree names that he wants to include in the ordinance. I imagine that would be a recommendation that this board would make.
Through the chair,
Go ahead.
I just have a quick question. So
Sure.
it sounds like we're describing the arborists. Your definition is going by like a legal definition.
Correct.
Like this is more of like the whatever society arborists are out there. Would it be feasible to include them both, like all titles, so you cover all bases, or is that?
Right. That's exactly why I mentioned that I think that that's a point of clarification that I need to make with him, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. But overall, I'm not opposed to including other organizations that would certify an arborist. I just want to make sure that those arborist certifications would also be seen under Florida law in an equal light. Because if they're not, obviously that may present some complication.
Yeah, we don't want to have any. Sort of
Right. Exactly.
We used to have two of our public works directors previous to Les were certified arborists. And so we didn't have to hire out that. We have to do that now. So I'm wondering if both of them would be appropriate to have. I mean, I don't care one way or the other, as long as we know what it.
No, I think we should use both word arborist and what does he use, tree care minister. For legal purposes.
Yeah, to the extent that there's no conflict.
Yeah.
I would have no issue either, board member, but I do want to clarify that because I want to make sure that we're both speaking the same wavelength and not necessarily, a more academic approach and a more, Florida legal approach, correct?
This is not your first time to do ordinance, right?
No,
I mean,
by any
not
means.
An ordinance, but a tree ordinance.
So I've actually drafted tree ordinances in Pinecrest. In Pinecrest, we did have an on-staff person who was, completely able to lift the scientific aspects of the ordinance because it is a very technical aspect of the ordinance, which I am not specialized to address. So, but yes, I have drafted tree ordinances before.
But it sounds like Mr. Fitzpatrick does. That's what he does, yeah.
And I intend on relying on him,
Did he come to the?
not that I'm aware of. I don't remember.
Like, there's, like, he's got the formal names for, trees or bushes that we're talking about. Can we put in parentheses?
The common name.
So, as a lesser term, not so scientific. Would that be something good?
What the comment is?
I would almost encourage it. Yeah.
Exactly. We include the common name as well as the scientific.
Not to devalue his letter, because I think it is incredibly useful. But for a legal perspective, the names of the trees really are less important than the substance of the. So if he provides the names, I'm more than happy to use those, and then in parentheses, put the common names that folks know them by.
I'm waiting on I don't think, I sent Juan a message now, but I don't have the letter. And
I'm gonna send it to you shortly.
Yeah, I'm just really curious to see that. Thank you, Juan.
You go to open up to comment. You like, while I get her the copy.
Oh, yeah.
Jackie, on that invite, where it said, ordinance comments, resident, that's the one that you're looking for.
Yes, we're going to that now.
If I go all the way down on the calendar, Evite,
Right there where the two attachments, there's three attachments. It has the agenda backup, which has the ordinance, and then you have
I
the.
have that. I
And
don't
then,
have-
yeah, you kind of got to click on the little arrow and it'll have the ordinance comments, resident.
Okay, silly me, shame on me. It's been a
It's-
really long day.
It's,
She had.
And I think the rain just washed out the leftover of my brains that I had, so I have it here. Thank you very much.
Jackie, we're gonna go ahead and open up to the public right now while you look it over.
Okay, thank you.
No, not listen to it, of course. Do both at the same time. Yeah. Okay, so folks, if you have something to say, please step up and state your name and address to the record.
I'm an outfit.
Good evening. Could you?
Yeah, the mic, please, sorry.
Good evening. My name is Richard Marquez. I live at 1202 Dove Avenue, Springs. I just want to say, over the last couple of years, I participated in the citywide tree planting program. And I've also included a couple of trees on my own and so in my swale of my property. And I tried to encourage other residents of Dove Avenue to plant trees. And to the extent that I've actually created a flyer with a lot of benefits of trees and tree canopies and distributed to the various homeowners. A lot of the feedback I got, particularly from those who don't have any trees in their swales, that they don't want to because they want to park more cars. So my recommendation to the city is there's a lot of public land in Miami Springs. The clay pit area that has swales all the way around, the two ginormous parcels of land just west of the clay pits. Some of the high school, Miami Springs High School, Springview Elementary School has large green parcels with swales that do have some trees, but there's large gaps. You can have a live oak tree here and then 100 yards down, another live oak tree. So maybe the city could in the future, as part of its tree planting program, maybe allocate a number of trees to be planted in those swales that belong to public land as opposed to, because we get a lot of, negative feedback from the residents who don't want trees, but we can take advantage of the land that we do have that are public, and fill in the gaps there with trees. So that's all.
We entertained some years ago, a number of times, of using the land under the wires by the high school as our own nursery. Which is to say, plant trees, let them get bigger, and then dig them up, plant them, where we want it. Oh, yeah. And because we, buy small and cheap, use time to get size to them and then put them in, because putting in a small new plant isn't always the greatest idea. It's better to have some, some roots to do it. Yeah. So I'm still big on that. I think the city could save a lot of money if they did that, and it would be beautiful.
Exactly. Even if you allocate just a few amount of trees each year to go and work, say, take Springview Elementary, for example, and just work on that all the way around, it may take a few years, and then move on to maybe the clay pits. Slowly but surely, we can beef up our trees and our tree canopy.
Well, we had a council person, Bravo, asked us when she first came in to come up with the ideas that we had for the city, short term, middle term, and long term. So that's kind of one of the long terms, but we haven't really done anything about it. So we can, I think we should get on that too. Put it a higher priority.
Grow trees. I grow trees in my yard. I have trees in Fawcett. I don't know what to do with it. The double window is going to Judy. You just lost. Oh, sorry. Well, then you have the issue of, which is great, as far as like they grow up, then you have to dig them up, replant them, and that requires public works or somebody else to actually do the maintenance, which costs money. I'm just, rolling that down the
But the
road.
money you save on the tree.
Right, but or you leave the trees in because it's also an oxygen and other benefits for our community. You can also just leave it. And then those that don't want them on the soil, I forgot what we were on. Then we have It is city property, so.
I believe they gave the homeowner the option.
Yeah, I think they
force
do.
something
They're
on
afraid.
somebody, so that it's,
Somebody
it doesn't belong to the property owner, the idea was not to force them. to use it.
Public Works has that drill, to make the holes.
You offered.
And Liz is here.
I don't
Liz,
know.
can I ask you a question? Does Public Works have that machinery that drills into the ground to make the hole?
The auger, we do own one, but we don't have the staff that is qualified to be able to do tree planting at the rate that you're talking at right now.
Liz, can you improvise for resident Marquez? Thank you for coming. The layout that Public Works does have, because I know that in the last year, if you've noticed around the city, we have planted a lot of oak trees. So I know Public Works is working on planting residuous trees on the city swales as well as resident requests. I like that idea where if maybe we have an overage of trees or not as many requests as we anticipated, obviously we can use those trees on city property where it deems feasible. But I know that you guys have actively been planting on city swales, and that's definitely something that you guys are always looking at, especially Marquez's recommendation by the parks is nice too. I know that parents park there for the games, but I also know that they're looking for some shade and not coming back to a steamy car. But I just want you to explain how Public Works distributes those trees that we get through our grant money.
So I'll give you an idea. We do have an extensive list of residents requesting tree plantings.
Okay.
Have $50,000 that is provided to us for budget every single year for us to do tree planting. There are
We got a 50,000 match last year, right?
no, not there was 25 from last year.
Oh, 25. Okay.
So, but I don't count that as my budget because that's kind of like extra, right?
Okay.
So I always go with what it is that we have budgeted is what I like to talk about. And of course, anything that we get through grants is going to be extra. It is extensive to go around, as Mr. Marquez has spoken, to go around to the residents and encourage them to plant on their swales. We have a lot of residents that don't want to plant on their swales. We also have to take into account what type of trees they're asking us to plant. Sometimes that swale may not merit because it's not wide enough for us to put a certain type of species. So we do have alternatives. So oak is not always the best alternative. I don't want to take up a lot of time on this, but if you just give me 2 or 3 minutes, and then I could probably answer a lot of your questions. As far as planting in the clay pits, we don't have an opportunity to do that. Obviously not inside the property. We could do it on the exterior of the property. I have been advised by prior administrations that that particular area is Miami-Dade County. I can confirm that and we can go back. I know that we have done some tree planting there in the past and they don't survive. It could be just the conditions of the ground. There's some areas that we try and plant throughout the city. I lost, unfortunately, after 2 years, 3 or 4, and I feel it personally. So, some Royal Poincianas that unfortunately after a couple of years did not thrive because the ground under it is not suitable. There is disease, et cetera, et cetera. I can go into more details if we want to have another conversation. So there's efforts out there. So where we don't have there, we've tried. And if not, it's just not the right location for, let's say, the grant requirements. Secondly, Springview Elementary, you would speak about the perimeter around Springview Elementary. I can put that on our list and we can most certainly look to see the size of the swales and then who are the folks that actually park around that area. And if it makes sense for us to do so. I know that some was put in a few years back on the Ludlam area. And I know that Councilwoman Bravo and I have spoken about that area in the past. As far as the open area on the Quail property that you're talking about, where all of those electrical lines are, that is not our property. That belongs to Miami-Dade Water and Sewer, and we're not able to plant there. I can plant on the perimeter, but I cannot plant within that open area. We're not allowed to. That is a staging area that they have. And I have asked, and it's not an area that we're able to plant. I can do some planting on the perimeter, but that's it. And for some,
Question.
yes,
Question, right, on the perimeter of that property of Quail, how do we decipher what's the calculation of our swale, because there's no sidewalk around the
that's
perimeter?
correct. So it has to be measured from the edge of the road in. I would have to look at a survey. I don't have a survey.
Okay,
I did 3 years ago. I did some planting there and they didn't survive. And it was just like a little test. It was on Quail, right close to Lenape. And they didn't survive after a couple of years. So there are some areas that the trees just don't survive. There's a particular
we have a lot of limestone here in Miami Springs, which doesn't allow not enough dirt.
there is, and there are some areas that unfortunately have some disease. So
Yeah,
if I plant there and I take it out and I plant it again, I tried doing that in that small triangle. If anybody is can kind of bring to their memory where we did the Miami Springs sign and across the street from the golf course, there's a really small triangle that has a concrete pole that I've been trying to get Miami-Dade County to get rid of it. Nobody wants to own it per
where
se.
is it? Where is it?
Right across from the golf course, right in the middle, right where the Miami Springs sign is, between the parking lot and the Miami Springs signs. There's
Send
a
me a
little
picture.
triangle
Let
there.
me see if we can get that done.
Yeah, so there is a tree there, but I tried to put a really nice Royal Poinciana there. And again, that area is diseased. So at least for the next couple of years, I'm not able to plant anything there, according to what I have been told by the company that we use for tree planting. So we have a very long list of folks that have requested trees. Again, some we can plant, some we cannot. It depends on the species they're requesting. If it's not that one, then they're like, oh no, then I don't want it. So it's tough. It takes a lot of legwork. So if the Board of Parks and Parkway would like to take that on, if there's an organization that would like to take that on, I think that we have another board, which is the Ecology Board, might have it. It takes a door-to-door, speaking to residents, telling them what we have available. And then when we go to do the final selections and we go knock on the door and we're ready, then we're like, I don't want it anymore. Or no, I don't want that tree. I want a different tree. And when we actually go out to plant, there's a lot of changing minds. So I think as a city, we need to kind of work on that. And especially as a department, we need to work on that a little bit. I see some recommendations. I'm sorry, I have a couple of recommendations that I will talk to administration about a little bit further that really doesn't have to do with the tree, but this request came in and I wanted to give you a couple of things that we're working on, hopefully so we can get better at tree planting. We did do some tree planting about 2-3 months ago, and now that it started raining, it's very difficult to plant when we're in a drought, when we're not getting any rain. It would cost us an enormous amount of money to continue watering those trees for them to survive under the conditions. Now, hence, fast forward to today, we're starting to get into the season where it makes sense for me to be able to plant. And that should be coming in the next couple of months.
Liz, can I ask you a question?
Yes,
You would like us as a board to get involved, but we're an advisory board.
I understand that. But I'm putting it out there just as a, the community can help us.
I would like to be involved.
You can be involved.
We're a small department, and if we can get the community involved in assisting in providing locations, getting buy-in from residents. So this is a whole educational thing, and I think we're moving towards that direction citywide with all of our departments. So you'll see something and we'll put something out there, and I don't want to take up this meeting for this, but those efforts are all there.
Thanks,
so,
Liz.
thank you, Liz. Actually,
You're welcome.
the things you brought up answered a lot of questions. I appreciate it. That was one thing that, Mr. Marquez also brought up, that he kind of marketed the whole thing as far as to his neighbors, to try and get trees planted, which I thought was great. I think, that you touched on in saying the city's kind of doing that. That'd be great to see, done on, social media or something like that, Councilman Bravo could probably get that ball rolling, I would imagine, on getting, I guess, as much bang for your buck without having to, I know you guys are stretched, in your departments. But ideally, just get out there and just kind of promote why having a great tree canopy in your community is, good for the community, good for your, the value of your homes, just walking around or riding your bike around in a shaded area, obviously is gonna keep things cooler. So, something like that out there. The other thing was, you said you had a list of people that were waiting for trees. So would you say there's a good amount of people that are still willing to put trees out? I wasn't sure if, if you were telling me that they were
Yeah,
initially,
I have to-
now they're not, but.
Yeah, I'd have to pull up that log for you, to see how many folks I have right now. I can tell you that I have enough to cover, what we have slated for this, particular year. So I'll have folks waiting for, the following year for tree planting. And it works like that. But again, you do have folks that do change their minds. Councilwoman Bravo, we did put out on social media, if folks want to have tree planting, to call our office. So we do have folks calling in and asking for tree planting. Again, one thing is you ask it, and then, you have folks that change their minds. But it's out there.
To
It has,
piggyback, I'm sorry, to piggyback on the awareness, I don't know if Shannon is doing it already, our public communication specialist. She may be able to put out on our monthly newsletter, tree canopy awareness. And that's something that goes out every month.
I'll send her a reminder of that.
Perfect, thank you.
Just have one question, maybe Roger, you could answer this. If someone commits to saying, yeah, I'll accept a tree on the swale, it's still city property. If they decide they change their mind, can we make some sort of like contract with that resident saying, okay, this is, you committed to this, we committed resources to bring you the tree. And, I'm just wondering, is there anything to sort of help the staff kind of, I guess once they go through the process, not to have to take it all back is.
Well, they would have to permit. They would have to permit, right, to remove it.
No, not to remove it, but they haven't even planted it yet. It was initially, so, Liz gets the request, they get the trees sorted, they decide what kind of tree it's gonna be, they get everything in place, and the person says, no, I changed my mind. Is there anything, maybe trying to think, I don't know, just.
Yeah.
Roger?
Like a commitment letter.
Like a commitment letter of some sort, yeah, just,
Yes, council member.
Roger, do you have any input on his, on that question that was just submitted by, I'm sorry. Who was a board member just talking just now? David Vargas. Yes, I saw him yesterday, correct? Yes.
correct.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if there's some sort of a non-refundable retainer or I don't know. It's, you don't want to make it complicated, but I do understand where Public Works is already allocating resources to get these trees executed on the swale. And I don't know how many of those last minute cancellations we have. I don't know if it's actually common. It's a very specific request. But I wanted to know if you had any input in that aspect to David's question.
So as to any type of contract, I'd be hesitant to say that, we can force someone into doing some particular action. I also think that it's a very important city policy consideration of the optics of requiring someone to plant a tree on the right of way. And then if they decide that maybe they don't want the tree, that we're going to go in there and sort of start penalizing citizens. I think that's a very sensitive city policy issue.
Better scenario would be that they said, yeah, we like the tree,
And
sell the house, new owner comes in, doesn't want the tree. That would be more just reasonable to me.
Then they have to apply for a permit.
They do, oh, yeah.
And we will certainly get into right-of-way trees in the ordinance.
Yeah.
So,
I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't think that many people ask for a tree.
and then don't get
I
it.
could be wrong, but I got it. And then all of a sudden, sad.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
My name is,
Excuse me 1 second. Mr. Marquez, did you finish?
Yes.
You sit down.
That might be
Good
tired.
evening, my name is Carmen Spangenberg. I live in Paul Avenue, 1131. And I'm a very old resident of here. And the thing is that it appalls me when we walk, the number of houses that are empty in the gardens completely, no trees, no bushes. Just the big concrete, a lot of concrete is getting more and more. And we are complaining, the people that I know, that we are losing our status of a tree city. I think that's very important to a city to have policies and the people that buy the houses to know. When we consider to come to Miami Springs, we also consider to go to Coral Gables. And Coral Gables had a very strict policy that would not allow us to park our pickup truck that we have at that time in the front. We could not put our boat visible. And that made us not to go to Coral Gables. To the Coral Gables benefit, you go around, it's a beautiful, beautiful community to walk.
Yeah.
We are a beautiful community, but if we don't watch out, we're not going to be in few more years. Because the number of the houses that are being fixed up, and I'm very happy with that, and choosing kind of landscape that are not similar to the ones that are proper to Florida, but proper to Arizona, is growing. And I don't know where is the boundaries of the people that are checking the dynamics of that concrete. Because we used to have a very good person to check how our standards would never pass. So many houses with the front completely covered with concrete. That's not my experience. So I don't want to take the time. We only are few here because the rain and because we were alarmed that we should not go out because there was a flood alarm. So that's why you don't see more people, because we are a community that likes tree. What is not coming the tree is the newcomers, which they have the right, but when you move to a community, you need to know the community boundaries. You say you cannot force, and I agree with you, but isn't their swell a public place?
Well-
When they move, they need to know the swells will have tree, period. You're not forcing. Those are ordinance. It's like the people from the Board of Education now, from the union that paints the building. Where was the person to check the mural? Because the mural was not painted in 2 hours, was painted several days.
So then your concern is more about the concrete driveways that people are putting.
No, my concern is to have policies in a city.
There should be, this probably is more of a code enforcement.
Yeah.
Building, they have to go and get a permit in order to put this.
Yeah, but I'm just pointing out, I don't want to talk to something that's not perceived. This meeting is about trees.
I think it's also adjusting the ordinance, that's what the ordinance is
Yeah.
going to do now, that it's.
And,
not-
and is addressing to make an ordinance. An ordinance is only valid if they are enforced. So my point is not that is the owner of the house that don't want to plant the tree in a public area, that's the problem. The problem is that we didn't spell to the owner when they buy the store. This is Miami Springs, with them, this and this ordinance. We expect trees, we don't expect you to live like Doral or like another place, to live like Miami Springs. You don't like it, get another house. We are a desirable place. There is a lot of people to buy Miami Springs. We are not a place just to make money. We are a community and people. And unfortunately, the rains were, because this will be full, I guarantee you. Because I talk at least with 16 people this afternoon to come. So I'm sorry, I'm already but all over the
Okay,
place.
that's okay.
The main thing, huh?
You are speaking for 16.
Yeah, the main thing I want us to say, we need to stop to be afraid of allowing that the minority that just fly in will define the future of Miami Springs. Miami Springs is a community of people that are here for a long, long time. I knew your parents, I knew yours, and we continue. And there's a lot of people that come back because we are the way we are, with trees, with parks, with a residential area. And you are the ones to enforce. It's not to fight against, it's to say, these are the rules, please.
Well, before you leave, it's so good to hear. It's so good to hear what you're saying, because we don't get a lot of feedback. We rarely have people come to our meetings,
To complain.
but this new ordinance, the purpose of this new ordinance that we just finished, the reason we're here tonight is that we strengthened it. We made it much stronger, much more punitive. It was to the request of, specifically Councilwoman Bravo and Mayor Mitchell. There were the two who were strongest people behind us in support of what we did. So we kind of did what you're saying to do, but you had a comment about her speaking.
Yeah, this might be a great topic to come to the next council meeting. And put your name on the.
Say what you said to others.
Exactly, because they will hear you. We're more of an advisory board and we did do a lot on this and as you said, Jackie Bravo and Maria Mitchell. And now we made it stronger, so now whoever's not complying can be addressed. But this would be good for you to come to the next meeting.
I will come.
And you should know that we use Gables as one of our primary ordinances to pull from.
Yeah.
So we're right where you are on this.
Let me just make a little parenthesis. I shop in Mylands and I shop my weekly shopping because I want mine to continue. I not just go for one item. And 1 year ago, they were becoming too lax on the language. Miami Springs is a community of many nationalities. But because I look like that, I would come there with start in Spanish. I speak, but I refuse to make my community unfriendly for other people that are in America. So I went and I talked to them and I said, I'm here 30-something years and I would like you to pick up on that. If a person don't speak a language and you know Chinese, speak Chinese, I don't have a problem with that. But you are in Miami Springs. This is a community that shows English as the main language. Don't let this pass. And I was so happy that they strengthened to the 15 days after that, they would not talk to me because I look Spanish. So I went there and I complimented them. But the thing is that we can all survive as a community if we get passionate for our community. And our community has rights, the rights of the majority, not the newcomers. Thank you.
Well, your point is well taken, that an ordinance is only as good as its enforcement.
Yes.
Major point.
Put that in the ordinance.
Thank you, Carmen.
Thank you, Carmen.
Do you want a tree on your swale? Do you have a tree on your swale?
I do have, but you can put another one. Many trees are-
Okay, we'll check to see if it's big enough for another one.
Okay,
Have a good night, dear. Thank you.
another thing, make trees variable, not just oaks.
Yes.
Very important. And you know what's,
We're good at.
We have a list of different
yes,
types.
look, and you know who's doing very well about trees is Virginia Gardens. They are
Yes, they
planting
are.
the little bushes with lots of
They are.
flowers. Yes. Big bag,
They have intention.
yes.
That's something to say?
I thought in one of the discussions that when this ordinance was gonna push forward, that there was gonna be an education on the new ordinance and that people were going to be advised. However, social media or such, but, there was also talk about the realtor getting involved, if I remember correctly, that when they sell a house, that they get involved. That was a recommendation. So there are points that, to Carmen's discussion, we have put backside discussion of making this ordinance more profound.
And the builders too.
Correct.
That's right.
Correct.
As a matter of fact, I spoke today with Judy Walton, a realtor from Miami Springs for many years, and if everybody knows her from her ads, what's her ad? A tree. She is into trees. I speak with her quite frequently about the trees. She wanted to be here tonight, but she couldn't. So yeah, we are into that, and we had even discussed at one point of giving the two main realtors, Charlie Leonard and Judy Walton, a piece of paper, something, welcome to Miami Springs. Welcome to the Tree City Canopy, etc. Blah, 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 blah. You know, just a little downfall, but. I don't know where we're at with that,
Yeah,
but we did discuss that.
could you put on the next agenda that discussion of education? Let's redo that
Yeah.
or continue doing that. Okay, sir, were you gonna speak to us?
I think Carmen covered it pretty well. I have the same sort of,
Thank you, Carmen.
Back up.
Okay, so we have before us the recommendations from Mr. Fitzpatrick or Dr. Fitzpatrick.
Right.
And comments,
I would actually like to make a motion
you'd like to make motion to move the,
to go ahead and move and. What Mr. or Dr. Fitzpatrick has advised us with the exception of what the attorney advised us about the first paragraph, about the arborist and the tree care industry, just to make it more clear.
okay,
And as well as the other subject that was brought up about putting the common names of the plants as well as the scientific names.
okay, so word your motion.
Okay, so my motion is to go ahead and accept what Dr. Fitzpatrick has done, with the exception of changing paragraph A, whatever the first one, the lines 38, 39. What's it that, how you have legally
Yes.
stated the arborist and tree. And at the same token, what's the rest? 4, I believe, in 245 is just to simply put in the common name of the plant as well as what's listed.
Absolutely.
One, can we move this unamended with the amendment?
Yeah, so what your motion would be to adopt the suggestions by Dr. Fitzpatrick. And with the exception of the two exceptions that Pam made, and that's the motion, and then.
Okay, so we can
Well, before
move this with the additions.
With the changes, is that?
Yeah, you can do that as a process, but and with a motion, you just need a second.
I'll second the motion.
But
First and second, so you can discuss.
before, is it the attorney's position that we can vote on something that isn't written yet?
So I wanted to clarify something real quick, that Mr. Fitzpatrick's advice, very well taken, and more than happy to incorporate it. I do want to mention there are other changes and there's other things in the ordinance that we did want to review with this board.
Oh,
Yeah, quite a bit, actually. No. In general. Okay, from the actual, or from the 20-page or so ordinance.
Do we vote on the adoption first and then go over your changes?
We certainly can. And then if I could just may restate the motion as I understand it, it's to essentially recommend that I work with Mr. Fitzpatrick to incorporate the changes that he recommended, minus the first change relating to the definition of the arboricultural institution, and to incorporate also common names in addition to his
would it make sense to do it, but would it make sense that we vote on whatever's written and have another meeting and vote on that, or?
My only reservation with that is I think that most of these issues could be resolved simply me with him and if I may, most of the changes that he recommended are just changes to the technical terminology of which trees or which organization is ideal. And I think those changes are, you know, when you read the recommendations, I can figure that out with Mr. Fitzpatrick. And we also have to keep in mind that we do want to have this ordinance in the books sooner than later. To ensure, you know, that the trees in our great city do end up getting protected.
The goal is to have this on the next council meeting, because this ordinance as drafted was already approved on first reading, pending the amendments that we are going to be talking about today. Not amendments, add-ons, as in a fee schedule that we have not established, which is really important. So I'd love to get this on the next meeting, considering we are going into hurricane season and people are going to start trimming trees and doing all the necessary preparations and requirements. But we want to make it sure that it's clear, not to get confused when it comes to trimming, getting prepared with a hurricane season versus getting rid of a tree. So I can see where that could become an opportunistic time for tree removal right now. So I'm just, you know, what I think, Roger, we're going to be talking about the fee schedule right now, correct? In this meeting?
So the fee schedule is actually something that is being developed by staff in consultation with CGA. We have not finished that. I can provide a little update to you and the board on that aspect, though.
Yes, please.
To be clear, I don't want to delay this at all. I wish it was already done, but I just want to make sure we follow everything to the letter.
Right.
Mistakes. So.
Yeah, these items are going to be incorporated into the ordinance. These recommendations, like Roger said, there are just very, like, it's just technicalities as far as the way that things are described or written, like spelling and lack of terms. So we'll go ahead and Roger will go ahead and hit up those recommendations within the sections that our ordinance has. So for example, if lines 38 through 39, that comment could present itself in the tree arborist section or wherever that verbiage is for that particular recommendation, it'd be incorporated there. Okay, not verbatim, but to the same definition that is being commented. So there's nothing holding you back today. There's no real motion to be done or said. It's just we were asked to get together today to just double confirm that we are in agreement with the drafted ordinance that was passed on first reading, and also to bring awareness to you as a board to collaborate on the recommendations of Fitzgerald. Roger, is that correct?
Right. There's a couple of concerns that were expressed by staff and by council as well that I'd like to go over with the board to get their input. And again, these are relatively technical aspects of the ordinance that, you know, as legal, I don't set policy. I set, you know, the language itself.
Okay.
Can we get into that now?
Absolutely. So I will just give a very brief introduction to this ordinance. This ordinance really has three major effects, right? It gets into our permitting procedures when permits are required. It clarifies some of our exceptions when permits aren't required. The second aspect of it is it actually really enhances the process for analysis of when a tree permit is going to be required if it doesn't fall within an exception. And then the third and one of the more impactful aspects of this ordinance is that it revises the code enforcement aspect of our tree protection ordinance. Our tree protection ordinance, as it currently stands, did lack a little bit of teeth, so this one adds it.
I'm sorry to stop you. We had the motion from Pam and we had the second for that.
Let's dispose of that. You're right.
Yeah, you want to vote all those in favor to a vote, or you want to vote individually? Roll call.
He's gonna make comments about the ordinance.
But you can do the.
But as far as the
and-
Fitzpatrick recommendations.
Second, before we move on to the
Thank
next,
you.
anything else, we'll just finish that one.
Okay, this is the.
So,
Correct.
I'll do a roll call vote for that.
Yeah, sure.
So, it was a motion made by Pam, seconded by David, and then I'll do a roll call. So, Vice Chair Lynn Brooks. Board Member, Vargas.
Yes.
Board Member Wallen,
Yes.
Board Member Carneri,
Yes.
and Chair Ritchie.
Yes.
Okay, so we 5-0 for that.
Sean. Thank you. He's keeping me in check. Robert's rules are important. Anyway, jokes aside. Yeah. So the first area where, and Liz, feel free to jump in here, where I wanted to point out is actually going to be on page. Well, starting on line 222. The board had made a recommendation that all tree stumps that are remaining after a valid tree removal has to be ground down. Now, Liz has provided us comment that requiring stump grinding to a minimum of 8 inches below grade, right, and being removed and filled may be a little too stringent of a requirement. So I wanted to bounce ideas off of this board, see if there's anything that this board would be interested in modifying in that number, or if Liz, you want to provide a recommendation as to that aspect.
Liz?
Usually we do 4 inches. That's the norm. We can refer to other standards. What we use is 4 inches below grade.
I think that's acceptable, especially if you're gonna have, people walking, they may cross over that area where a tree has been removed, so we wanna make sure that it's leveled off. And there's not too much of a stump left behind, just, for safety. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
that's line 222, you said, Roger?
Is 4 acceptable to you guys?
4 inches is fine.
Everybody concurs on that?
I just, how do you pick the numbers out of curiosity? From like 8 or 4 or 6, just what, from your standpoint, what is how do you guys come up with the 4 inch out of curiosity?
I have deferred to staff to that. So our actual folks out there and what has been used here in Public Works historically.
Would it cost twice as much to go 8 inches?
It would cost possibly for the resident, it would cost more time for the resident, and it's more fill that they have to put in there. Yeah. I mean, ideally, all of us would love the stump to be totally removed, but some of these trees that are requested to be removed are enormous. So the root ball is really big. Unfortunately, if you start, putting it down to 8 inches, that's a lot. Some of these stumps can take up to a week for us to take care of just ourselves with the stump grinder that we have.
Are you all right with 4?
This is what we have used historically, and again, I can only go on what staff has used here, and I am making the assumption, no problem saying that, that's what has been used with the prior director before Lazaro, that was Tom Nash. So
Okay.
the person that we have as our streets foreman is a certified
no, we don't.
tree trimmer, so.
We're gonna change that to 4.
I'm keeping notes of all.
Okay.
Of each one, so the first item is reduce it, or from
Yeah.
8 inches to 4 inches.
From 8 inches to 4 inches.
And you know what, at the end of the day, if the homeowner wishes to grind it even further, but not past 8, I think that could be an option too. Because maybe they just wanna get it lower for their sake. Maybe is that a possible option? The minimum of 4, but they could do up to 8.
Oh, no, I mean, they can remove the root ball if they'd like to.
Because at the end,
Yeah, what you're looking for is a minminimum standard. That's what you're looking.
Okay, minimum.
I just did this, as you know this, and I didn't have anything to say about it. I just assumed they would do whatever, because they know the city's ordinance. I mean, I just assumed I know about assumptions. But I assume that they just did what is required. Was that a mistake on my part? I mean, I think they went more than 4 inches. Yeah.
You got a permit for it?
I did.
No, I didn't mean, I
No, I did, it was a dead tree.
What I meant was, they had to get the permit, so I'm sure that whoever took the tree out had the information.
I got him from the neighborhood, so.
I think your issues and, you know.
Yeah.
Good, I just have one other, Eric, just real quick, just out of curiosity, yeah. Are you gonna replant something there, you know?
Yes, I am. I missed out on.
Would it be able to happen with the amount of writing that they did, or?
It was a mound, David.
Okay.
I couldn't tell how deep it was because it was piled up, but it's beautiful mulch to spread it out.
Right.
You know, it was.
And then you can plant something on it, on that same spot?
Yes.
Okay, all right, yeah, I don't know much about that, so, okay, thank you.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Roger?
So the next area of comment that I received, and I actually have it up on the screen for you, is starting on line 383. It's table 54-2. Now, this table was recommended by this board, and I included it verbatim. As a reminder, the system that the board recommended was a canopy replacement system. So essentially, the permitting procedures now go: someone submits an application, staff will review the application for completeness. If it's complete, they'll proceed to evaluating the current trees on the lot, whether the trees can be saved by minor adjustments in a building or something like that. If that can't be done, we seek to relocate the tree to another area on the lot or off the lot. And in the event that there is no other option but to remove the tree, which sometimes there are reasons, we would analyze the canopy of that tree and require replanting of new trees that would equal the canopy credits that were lost, right? So if you can imagine a 1,000 square foot tree, you would need to replace 1,000 square feet of canopy in new tree plantings.
We used to use a term that the planting would create a potential equivalence.
Correct.
So they planted, it may not cover that much ground, but eventually it's with.
Correct. And that's the intent here. So if you look at the chart, and I'm going to use 1,000 square feet because it's easy, you would be required to plant trees that would equal 1,000 square feet. So you could do that with planting of 2 large tree species. You could do that by planting of 10 small palm tree species. Now, I want to bring light to that specific point. The palm tree species received a lot of comment from the council, and there were concerns that were expressed that an oak tree should not be replaced by a palm tree.
Correct.
And I wanted to confirm with this board whether the intent, and again, I received this verbatim, so.
What question? Liz, are palm trees covered in the ordinance, protected?
No. The only time that palm trees are included is when there's a grouping of palm trees, and I believe it's 5 or more. And then that's when we request that a tree is planted to, provide canopy for those 5 palm trees. The city itself does not plant any palms except in certain circumstances. For example, there's some parkways that we do just because we're not able to, and I'm sure you're familiar with those areas, that we're not able to actually put big canopy trees just because of the locations. And it doesn't, make sense to put in a canopy tree. So for example, around the golf course, around, there's some around the circle. So there's some areas where you have some palms planting, but I can tell you the last 6 years I've been here, we have not planted any palms at all. They don't qualify for any grants to put in any palms. So I know that palms were discussed and put into here. I understand the hesitation of council to not include palm trees because they do not provide the same benefits as a canopy tree will.
So do you think palm trees should be allowed to be used in replacement of canopy that's lost?
I do not.
If they're not, I don't.
I do.
Why would we say you can put this tree in and then as soon as you put it in, you cut it down?
Yeah.
No, Mitigate?
Yeah,
I will
I-
say, sorry, Liz, I
No,
will
no,
say
go
from the ordinances I've seen, I've never seen palm trees
Okay.
being used. Again,
Right.
that's just anecdotal. But I think that is indicative of where most tree ordinances go, which is
So
tree for tree.
sounds like the city itself doesn't replace tree canopies with palm trees, so why wouldn't we hold our residents that same standard? Am I correct in saying we don't replace unless if it's just specific to a swale or something that, like a median in a road or something where you can't fit anything else, but. Yeah, so I mean.
That's correct.
Why would we allow a resident to cut down a larger canopy? And then to the point, if they really wanted to work the system, they could leave it there a couple of months and then cut it down with no penalty later and have no tree at all. So-
Right, correct. So if you notice the tree plantings that we did along South Royal, there's very few in ratio to palms to what we planted out there. So I made sure that we did have canopy trees and that when I come back and visit 10 years from now, 15 years from now, that I'm actually seeing a canopy growing in that particular median that we did there, the work that we did with traffic calming on South Royal. I think it's gonna look
Or can we just
absolutely,
strike that, or is that? literally
it's
just
gonna
strike
look
that?
absolutely stunning.
The
So
recommendation to strike that? Okay. I just wanted to make sure that this board. Okay, perfect.
To know that not any other cities that you know of, to your knowledge, you know, allows a palm tree to.
It shouldn't be.
No, even like a big coconut palm, as big as those palms are, I think you're getting as much bang for your buck as an oak or royal palm, I mean, a royal palm sienna.
I'm just taking notes, by the way. So.
So we're gonna be removing what line?
We're gonna do all of them.
So Councilmember Bravo, we would not be actually amending any line. What we would be doing is amending the chart that is located on line 383. Table 54-2, we would remove large palm tree species, medium palm tree species, and small palm tree species from counting towards canopy credit replacements.
So that will be removed.
Hmm?
Maybe in other parts of the ordinance.
Yes, and I will certainly make sure to make those changes.
There are palm trees.
Correct. And I will be, of course, removing those with that recommendation.
Excellent.
Active taking notes. All righty. Let me just make sure. Okay, whoops, I am so sorry. This is going a little crazy. Oh, while we were at that actually same section, were we okay with the actual canopy credit values that were assigned to the large, medium, and small tree species? I wanted to confirm that. That was actually in the recommendation from this board, right?
We're
was
still
almost
on
like a
line
mix.
38.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, Dr. Fitzpatrick seemed to know that.
His comments were strictly as to the taxonomical names of trees and the organizations that we referenced. Okay. Alrighty. Okay. Now, as
you-
to, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Roger, I just want to stay on this. Are we gonna discuss the removals without a permit?
Yes.
Okay,
Is that the next line?
You're talking about the tree, the code enforcement provisions?
correct.
Okay, yes, we can certainly jump to that.
No, I mean, you don't have to. I just have something that I wanna discuss because it has to do with the fee schedules, and I know that we're working on fee schedule, but I think it's important to bring to the board for their thoughts on that.
Yes. So this is going to be on line 756. That's where the new section begins. Correct.
Do you want me to go ahead and read that, or is everyone having an opportunity?
Oh,
to
I
read
thought
it?
everyone was. Okay, perfect. So if I can briefly summarize that provision, a lot of cities in Miami-Dade, Coral Gables, Miami Beach will have very high fines for cutting down a tree illegally. You'll see figures such as $2,000, $3,000. The city of Miami Springs is not permitted under state law to impose those types of fines because of the size of our city. Under state law, cities like Miami Beach, Miami Lakes, and some of these larger cities are actually permitted to have fines higher than $250 and $500. $250 is for a first time offense and $500 for a second time offense. That is a question for the wisdom of the legislature.
How much bigger? What's the beaches?
Well, I do have, there are solutions to this. Now, keep in mind, this is only happening if you cut a tree without a permit. Okay? Right. Correct. So previously, the fine was limited to $250 for a tree, one violation, $500 for a repeat. What we have done is, instead of the violation being on the cutting of the tree, the violation is now on the failure to obtain the permit for the tree. And just like any regular building permit violation, that's for every day that you have not obtained the building permit. So $250 is now actually going to have some bite, because if you do the math, $250 in a week is $1,250. And if you extrapolate forward, you end up with a significant fine once you've been found that you did not get the tree removal permit.
What is, and my, you, Roger, is if the tree's gone now, we have no idea how large the tree was or anything like that.
Right.
Speculate, but at that point, how do you get a permit? Like, can the city just deny it and say, no, you can't get.
Right. So, right, that's an excellent question. You would have to apply for an after the fact permit, right, to remove the tree. Now, as part of this ordinance, getting the after the fact tree is going to require you to go through the entire process. We're probably going to have to estimate somewhat the canopy that was lost. And Liz might be able to talk to this, but I know, for example, in other municipalities, we have very good GIS systems to show the before and after. And it may not be exactly to the day, but it gets you a pretty good estimate, because trees don't grow that much within a year, 2 years. Right.
Yeah, at minimum, we're able to, how can I say? So the most recent, if I go, for example, today, and it's occurred, I have a 2022 picture. So I can do an aerial from 2022 to measure the canopy, and I can also see, a face, like, whatever, like a standing person view, that little guy that I drag over there, and look at our arborist, can also, we've asked him to consult, and it's a contracted arborist that we have. So they also are able to give us those calculations as well. What I wanted to add to this was, outside of what would be an after the fact tree permit, that we have a requirement, and I want to make sure that we have a requirement in there that not only do you have the violation, but you also have to do replacement in addition to the fine. I want to make sure that that's there.
That's absolutely there, Liz. It has to, because in order to stop the violation from continuing, in other words, that just to toll the $250 violation per day, you have to get the after the fact permit. And in order to get the after the fact permit for a tree removal, if you go through the ordinance, you're actually required to go through that canopy replacement process. I will add, normally you would have this canopy replacement process. It is doubled when you actually cut down a tree without the permit under this
That's correct.
ordinance.
That's
Okay.
correct. Yep. That's what I had on my recommendations that we had discussed.
If we got notified in time, we could go to the trash piles. if they-
Yeah, and we've done that. That's something that we've been able to do. We do have a couple of folks that do some hat racking, and they do it, you know, like every 5 years or so, or 2 or 3 years, they find it to be okay. And again, the only thing that we can do is we can find them $250 or $500. And that's it. I mean, we don't have any gusto on that. So we definitely have to tighten that up and tighten up the ordinance itself when it comes to defining all of these items and then having a good fee schedule. There's also a permit fee schedule that I also have for recommendation, that I think might help deter our folks. It is going to give us a little bit more work. But if there's anything that we can do to protect this canopy, by ways and means of enforcing violations, enforcing that, you know, making it more difficult to remove this canopy. And that's the only way that we can protect this. So if you do it, now there's a big fine.
Right.
And it's tough with a small staff, but you know, it's doable.
And a small, excuse me, and a strong hat rack could render the tree non-viable, could it not?
Yes, the majority of hat racking that
It's a
has occurred
removal.
that I've witnessed in the past 3.5 years in this role, yes, it's no longer a tree. I took a
They
quick,
basically removed it.
no, they leave it there because that's how they like it, and that's looks good.
Could can we find wording that says that improperly pruned tree that renders that tree non-viable is a removal?
We have that in the ordinance. People are
Yes.
not allowed to have rack, and that is a destruction to the tree canopy. So we already had something in there. I don't
Yeah,
know, Liz said if we have, unless it falls under the current $250 violation, I don't know if we have a fee for
So hat racking, you'll have a definition on line
so-
71. So it's discussed there, and hat racking and topping has a similar violation because at that point it's no longer considered a tree.
right. So we need a in the trust.
If-
I like
if I may,
Lily does.
I do apologize, Councilmember and Liz.
Go ahead,
I
go
just
ahead.
I want to clarify one quick thing. One of the things that we have, I identified through my experience in Pinecrest and in other municipalities is actually that we could strengthen our definition of destruction. And I've actually gone ahead and pulled it up in the ordinance right there. It begins on line 55. So hat racking is absolutely, you know, a horrendous act and it can harm the tree. But if a hat racking rises to the level that it effectively destroys the tree, that would just be considered a tree removal without a permit.
You can see it here in section 54-07, and you go down to line 620. Any act of tree abuse that renders a protected species specimen tree to be non-viable or effectively destroyed shall constitute effective removal and require full compliance of the code. So,
Correct.
We had discussed it.
I think that's what you were saying here.
Yeah, and if you look at the line 55 definition, it's very, no, that's okay. I'll increase the size. But it really addresses that point that there is a distinction between, and I hate to use it, but you know, someone just, you know, just doing a very bad job trimming a tree and hurting the tree is a different kind than effectively destroying. And we should differentiate between someone who destroys a tree by doing a very, very bad job at pruning, right?
Well, and I think that sometimes when that happens, that's really just intentional, whether it's something that they want to do, or we have, for instance, we have neighbors that share very close adjacent line on a sharing tree that may belong to one owner. And then the other owner, the neighbor, doesn't like the tree, so they will literally limb the whole tree on their side. So
You're
that's
absolutely
not
right.
allowable either.
You're
And
absolutely right, council member, and that's
when it comes
exactly.
to trees, now when it comes to hedges, you have full right to trim your side of the hedge if your neighbor's hedge is encroaching onto your side. But when it comes to trees and you limb half of the tree, sometimes the trees don't survive. So I don't know, I am thinking something like that would fall into those terms, even if it's on private property.
You're exactly right, council member. Sometimes folks do intentionally, quote unquote, prune a tree in order to destroy it. And that's why this definition makes it very clear.
I'm not talking about pruning. I am talking about literally limbing. I can tell you what happened to me. It was a really sad situation. Luckily, my tree grew back. But it's still limbless. Just I got leaves, but all the limbs lit like huge.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of scary when you see that. I almost just removed the tree because it was kind of depressing. But most of the times when people do that, it's either intentional because the buyer, I mean, the owner wants to do it, or there's some sort of issue. Let me ask you a question on the Miami Lakes ordinance. They have their penalties and remedies for removing a tree without permit. I know Liz talked about or touched or gave me a sparked the feed on this for me. They would measure the diameter, which would be the DBH, and depending on what is observed, there's a fee that's applied, right? A violation. So they've gone from 0.2 inches all the way up to 60 inches, or wait, 60 inches on a DBH, and their fines ranging from $1,000 to $20,000.
Yeah, they're
They're very
yeah.
detailed. Can you remind me why we didn't go that route, or
Absolutely. Under state law, we
that's
are,
something that can be done?
no, under state law, there is a differentiation between municipalities of a certain size. I believe the cutoff is
Okay.
actually about 50,000 people. We do not reach the
Oh,
50,000 number, so we are stuck under a different set of standards that the state has set for us. We are allowed up to $250 per day, or
okay.
$500 for repeat. However, in addition to the permit, like I said, we're no longer going $250 for the violation, but $250
Yeah,
per day
Yeah.
that you don't get the permit. And
I
that,
think it's gonna help a lot.
right, and we are requiring surveys and significant documentation prior to submitting a tree permit removal or a tree removal permit. So the way I see it, I don't see how someone could realistically get a tree removal permit within 2 days, for example, to just have $500. And in addition, this is something that, just to go back to the topic of enforcement, we are actually authorizing the manager in his discretion, right? And I'll explain that in a second, to bring forward tree removal permits, certain tree removal permit violations. I do apologize, it's going haywire. To the special magistrate. Now, in case none of you are bad citizens, I don't think any of you are. The special magistrate enforces our code, right? He's essentially like a judge for the for the city. If the special magistrate and the city manager or the city manager brings forward a tree removal violation, and he says, special magistrate, I'd like for you to consider whether this tree removal is an uncorrectable violation. Under state law, we are authorized, if the special magistrate finds that or confirms that recommendation, to enforce up to a $5,000 fine in addition to normal violation fines, and that would be per tree. So
But how do they calculate from a minimum to a maximum penalty up to 5,000? How is that gonna be calculated?
that is a special magistrate's determination. He would have to make that determination, or she.
I don't know if that's something that's calculable.
Under
Are
state
you
law, we
talking
are,
about the amount?
under state law, the special magistrate can, what do you call it? In addition to normal code enforcement violations, so that's $250 per day, 500 for repeats. the special magistrate could, in addition to that, go up to $5,000 for essentially the creation of an uncorrectable code enforcement violation. The tree's dead. It can never be brought back. It's uncorrectable. If he makes that finding, he could impose or she could impose up to $5,000 in addition.
Okay, is that something the board is okay with?
Yes,
Yes,
absolutely.
yes.
So submitting a permit, it's gonna take you, I mean, what's the minimum turnaround time on a permit from the city? You know?
So right now, because again, it's a contracted service that we have, it is quarterly.
Okay,
I don't, in case of an emergency, of course, we can go out there and we can, there's exceptions. I have done it, in many different ways. And they've come out and they've been able to help. We haven't had a lot of emergencies, maybe, 2 that we've had in the past 3.5 years. But we do have them processed on a quarterly basis. There are some that we can do in-house. I mean, if it's not a protected tree, we're talking about something completely different, correct?
no, yeah, I was only asking that question because let's say someone removes the tree without a permit, they're not gonna be able to turn around and get a permit in 2 days and only pay $250 a day.
None-
100,
And that would be, and that would be on a
the
case by case.
amount per day, yeah.
Correct. So that would be on a case by case basis. And of course, if this is adopted or when it gets adopted, then of course we'll have to make separate arrangements with our contractor. And if we have to have a different type of contracting, again, as you're aware, Lazaro retired, so there is that position is going to be filled again. So we will have a new public works director, and that person will decide how they want to move forward, if they want to make any changes. We can most certainly have just an arborist and not a different kind of arborist or a different type of service. And that's something that we can change. That's the current people we're using can accommodate us. It's just a matter of us giving them the green light. When I discuss about when I was kind of touching upon the permits, we have not discussed a fee schedule, and I do understand that, and I think it will help to kind of give you an idea. When looking at the Miami Lakes, I think it's the one that's the most reasonable one for our residents. There's an application fee, and then there's an initial inspection fee. And this is where I think it differs from what we're doing today. You just go, you pay $35, and then that just covers the cost of us going out there. And whoever it is, whether it's our department or whether we have to hire an arborist, which does not cover the cost of the arborist, just so that you're aware, they don't charge $35. But it has an inspection before and an inspection after the removal is done. And there's a cost for both. There's a cost of an application fee, which, just to give you an example, would be $63 for a single family residential, plus $35 for the initial inspection. So it's $98 for you to remove a tree. After inspection would be $35 for final inspection and $12 per tree, up to a max of $320. So again, it's another tool to help us maintain our tree canopy.
And
It's
may
a
I add,
work,
Liz,
but
may
it
I add to
helps.
that just real quick? The permit fees are standard. Those are what everyone would pay to process a permit fee. What is a little, or is a case by case analysis, is in the event that you want to remove the tree, you have no space on your property, we are going to establish a schedule that best estimates the equivalent value that would be required to replace that tree. And
Right. No, I'm just talking about a permit fee.
right. But I want to add on to that because I know that permit fees can sometimes be mixed up with, well, what about a contribution to replace the tree?
The mitigation.
Right,
Well,
the
we
mitigation
would
is
call
separate from the
mitigation, correct.
permit.
Correct.
Right, the permit fee is just so that Liz and her team can review it. And then we will be establishing a schedule, and that's what we're working on, to establish what the value of a tree is, which is very difficult, but that's what we are working on. I will say a recent land use.
The fee schedule separate from this.
I really like that fee schedule. It's just to offset operational costs.
Correct. So, so this is the last point I was making, and I wanted to kind of illustrate, we are going to be creating a city tree trust fund, or rather more formally establishing that we have this city trust fund. So if you go in and you request to remove a tree, you can't relocate it, you can't save it. And, you know, removal is found to be necessary, folks will be required to donate an equivalent value to the city trust fund. And the city will be able to decide, and it's very pertinent, I think, to the discussions that were had earlier, where the city could spend that money to plant trees. So that schedule is being worked on right now. I want to say that, and this is just an example, we had a recent zoning item that came up. There were trees that needed to be removed by the nature of development. Under the old system, the equivalent value would have been valued at around 2,400. And we're still working on these numbers. The current estimates would be nowadays, that would cost about $9,000. And these were a lot of trees, I want to be very clear, but so that you understand, we are adding teeth to this. And if you can't replace the trees on your site, in other words, if you plant the trees, you're fine. But if you can't, you're still going to be required to replace it so that the city can address the trees and plant them elsewhere. All right.
So then, the ordinance. We'll
Right.
move forward into the next council meeting and take it. We have their final approval, is that correct, Kathy?
I'm gonna get this passed on the next council meeting. It'll go on second reading.
Thank you.
Just one question about the.
Sure.
So it's gonna be on the second reading at the next council meeting. We made changes, do they have to vote twice again, or no, it continues with the?
No,
changes?
that's why second reading is like, it's structured that way, so first reading, there can be changes in.
Okay, so-
That's why it came to this board before, it goes to second reading or final adoption.
Great, so.
For voting for final adoption. Do they need to, the two changes that were.
I would recommend
Yes.
just
Yes.
formal recommendation. Yeah.
The two, which were, just to reiterate, the 4 inches instead of 8 inches, below grade, for the stump removal. And for eliminating palm trees and as credit trees for the tree capture. As they don't provide the shade, they're not sure.
Yes.
And does that include groupings?
I don't think it's-
Yeah, no palm trees, at least, we're gonna remove.
We're gonna remove palm trees.
It's not gonna add as credit, so you can't use it as a.
And I will address it where it's appropriate to remove references to palm trees where they don't belong.
I'll make that motion, to accept that language into the,
I second.
We got a movement, and a motion and a second.
I agree.
Any discussion?
No second. She seconded.
No, seconded, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous.
And then do you need a motion for the 4-inch?
No, that was inclusive. Whoops, I am so sorry. One thing I will note is we are currently working with the clerk on noticing. If we cannot get it for the next meeting, it will certainly be on the very next meeting. And again, that would just be a noticing thing. That would not be because it's not ready. All right.
I think we're gonna do
Okay. That's new business. Old business is our yards of the month. We got the one today, pretty nice on the villa. We'll start there. July is 389 La Villa Drive. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Month of August, 960 North Royal. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. And finally, 520 Quail. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Does anybody have any other business?
Before we adjourn, we'll just select the next meeting date, that way you can have it in your calendars.
And who's up for?
And yard of the month, correct.
Still have.
We don't have.
Michelle did one, I did one, and Dave did one.
Yeah, so it would be Eric, Lynn, and then I think David.
Are we talking October?
No, it would be September 10th, and it would be our regular time before.
Don't we have something about your proposal for the City Hall.
No, I think that can get approved administratively. That's why I didn't add it to this agenda. It's something that I spoke to Liz about before this meeting. I also spoke to our assistant city manager, Tammy Romero, who suggested that we go that we wouldn't need something to vote. But I'll get with everyone, and once it's it's like moving, I'll share the information with the board.
Send the diagram.
Yeah.
Can we, do we have any process by which we send a letter to Mr. Dr. Fitzpatrick?
I can do that. That's what I would be able to do as a board secretary.
On our behalf.
Yeah, if Eric, if you want to draft something, I can get together and
Okay.
we can send it out.
Okay. Will
So
do.
September 10th meeting will be at 4 p.m.
4 p.m. regular time. Yeah.
4 o'clock. Okay, good. All right, this meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please contact me in Fitzpatrick Communications. I need a